Hey there, Bear Club! At the Mama Bear Initiative, we explore how to protect ourselves so we can protect our cubs, the people who depend on us. Join us and get the confidence you need to stay safe, make good choices, and protect yourself and those you care about. Let's go!
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Mama Bear Initiative podcast. I'm Stephanie Dunham.
I'm Evelyn Mason.
I'm Rochelle Knapp.
We'd like to thank you for joining us today. We have a great episode planned on entitlement. And this came up because Rochelle and I experienced something very recently, just about a week ago, with someone in public. Now, they weren't doing anything to us. It was just happening right next to us, and it was the craziest thing. So we decided that talking about entitlement, because it seems like a really huge problem these days in lots of ways that we're experiencing, and we're seeing it on the internet, what have you.
Yeah, definitely.
So we want to kind of talk about what we want to. So we want to define entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
We want to talk about why it's a problem. We want to talk about how entitlement plays out in relationships and society. And then we also want to talk about the kryptonite to entitled behavior. So we may or may not get this done in half an hour. If we do get it done in half hour, awesome. If not, it'll be another two-parter, because we feel like this is a big subject and, again, needs a lot of attention.
Yeah, and we like to do deep dives, so here we are.
All right. So, Evelyn, since you're the one that looked it up on the interwebs, could you define entitlement in context of what we're talking about?
All right. So, a quick definition is I'm special. I'm inherently deserving of privileges or special treatment.
Yeah. Inherently being what? What does that mean?
Just because I'm me.
Yeah. Right. So let's put it in context of something. So a king or a queen who runs a country is entitled to certain things because they're king or queen.
Okay. So like that would be a legitimate entitlement.
Right. Yeah. Because, there are privileges that come with the position, or a CEO of a company, or a certain position of authority gives you the right to certain things, usually. So you are entitled to that.
Yeah, that's legit.
Yeah, that's a legitimate entitlement. But it seems like there are a lot of people who have what we would consider an illegitimate sense of entitlement going on in the world.
Yeah.
On a lot of different fronts. And I think it's probably just kind of a human thing.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's necessarily a specific generation, although it feels lately like there's a lot more going on in the world, or maybe we just are more aware of it because of the internet. I'm not sure.
It's hard to say, but still, I mean, we're definitely seeing it, and it could be we're just more aware.
Yeah.
I say it's pretty rampant because I see it everywhere, and I don't recall seeing it everywhere before. Like, It wasn't as obvious to me, and people were reprimanded for being entitled before. There was actually others who cared enough to say something depending on the situation. So I think it has increased over the years.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's probably true. A lot of things in society can increase with time depending on attitudes that change.
Right. Especially if it's allowed to go unchecked.
Especially if it's allowed to go unchecked. And I think sometimes we're putting ourselves in situations where we're creating a sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Based off of some belief about one thing or another. So now that we've defined entitlement, I'll put it in context of the illegitimate kind of entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about why it's a problem. Michelle, you want to take one of those points?
Sure, Steph. The first thing that comes to mind is it's a problem because it creates an imbalance of power between, depending on what the situation is, between two people, generally speaking. One person who is acting entitled is trying to dominate the other person, though they might use manipulation or victim mentality or whatever they can come up with to enforce their entitlement on the other person, or they'll just argue with you a lot until you back down, basically give them what they want, which is all really manipulation. And it creates a lot of disruption and a lot of frustration for people because you can't always say something to somebody because they'll just talk over you until they get what they want. I've seen that a lot. And it can become dangerous too for that reason.
Yeah. I think the idea is where two people should be equal, one person's trying to dominate, or there's just a lack of respect of, like, let's say an employee to an employer, where there should be a natural respect for the leadership position, but the employee is like trying to overtake the employer, trying to, unjustly get what they want.
Yeah. So, for example, if an employee feels entitled to a certain privilege, even though they haven't earned it, or the position doesn't give it to them, but they feel entitled to it, they might try to do things that, puts pressure on the employer,
Right.
in a way that gets them what they want, which I think you guys mentioned could look like aggression, manipulation, all sorts of things that kind of are gross behavior, in my opinion.
Yeah, or even getting others on their side to turn against that person.
Right.
Can get really bad.
Right. Yeah. So, power imbalances, there are hierarchies. Let's just be real. I remember a line from Master and Commander, the movie, where the doctor who is against hierarchies in general is like a naturalist.
Yeah.
And then there's the captain who's all about the hierarchies.
Yep.
So he has to maintain order in his wooden little world, as he called it. He has officers and other, sailors under him,
Right.
that he has to keep working in a certain direction. Like their jobs are important and they have to do their jobs. If there was no hierarchy in that situation, it would just be chaos and they wouldn't accomplish their goals. And at the time, it was to defeat the Spanish and the French and whoever was opposing them at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
And the captain and the doctor were having an argument about how the captain had to discipline one of the men who showed disrespect to a superior officer.
Right.
And in the heat of the argument, the captain said, "There are hierarchies in natures, Stephen. You said so yourself."
Right.
I mean, if we look into nature, we'll see, like alpha male behavior in certain kinds of animals.
Right.
That is a power thing. Like, who's going to be the top male? Who's going to get the most privileges?
Right.
And it exists. We can't get rid of the fact that there are hierarchies.
Right.
Now, are some hierarchies unjust? Yeah,
Of course. Yeah.
absolutely. But when someone's in a hierarchy and they're not exactly a victim of whatever, of the hierarchy, they're there existing in the hierarchy and they're not a victim of anything, trying to change the power balance could create a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I could see like resentment building. Why should she have to tell me what to do? I've been working here longer than her, even though she's in a position higher than me. That kind of thing, like, why should that person be allowed to, fill in the blank? And then that person then gets resentful.
Right.
And yeah, that never goes well.
Yeah, and I think the person who feels entitled has a sense of superiority. Because they feel entitled to a certain set of privileges, they feel superior
Right.
about those privileges towards other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have a set of shoulds.
Right.
I should get this. That person shouldn't be able to do that,
Right.
based on what? Their own
Perception.
weird. Yeah.
Right. And this really does come down to a perception of reality.
Right.
And, a lot of times people put up with entitled behavior because they don't really want to engage.
Right.
with
That's
the
for
person
sure.
who's displaying this stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've had experience with people where I was hoping that they would, if I said the right thing to them, that they would stop being entitled and actually listen to what I'm saying. That was never the case.
Yeah.
They just keep going. They get into this weird loop where they can't stop, or they don't want to stop themselves from talking or yelling or whatever they're doing. And I can't reason with them.
Yeah. Well, they feel justified.
Yeah. In my job, I can't de-escalate that person because they refuse to listen and just want what they want. Or they want to make a big deal about something that isn't a big deal.
Right. You know, it's something you've mentioned multiple times now is people feel entitled to just steal from your store.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
It's rampant. It's terrible.
And if they get called on it, they act like a victim.
Yep. It sure
Yeah. Yeah. That whole victim mentality is definitely closely tied to entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
That whole thing, like I was saying about the employee resenting the boss, you know, poor me, poor me. Let's say the guy had been working there, I don't know, 15 years. The boss came in last year and it's not fair. Poor me. I should have her job, for example, or, you know, that whole thing, like the world's against me.
The thing is that I work in a convenience store, and the thing is, like, everybody there who's a manager is younger than me, and I'm 50 years old. I've been there almost 7 years. Mm-hmm. And I've never, in any of my jobs, have ever had that thought. My thinking is they deserve that position because they work to get it.
Right.
Now, that's not always true. Sometimes people do get privileges without working for them, promotions and whatnot, but I've never seen that in this particular store. Everybody earns what they get there. It's never been, you're getting this because you're my best friend. That was going on for a while. That a stop that was put to that. I have seen it in other places, and generally speaking, it's very hard to be under someone who's been given a promotion without having any idea what they're doing.
Yeah, because there again, there's that resentment that can build up.
Yeah.
Like it's not fair that I think it's not fair is a term I've heard from entitled people.
Right. And that resentment often builds to anger, and anger can get into aggression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, so if anybody's a fan of Charlotte Dobre on,
Yes.
on YouTube or whatever.
Shout out to Charlotte Dobre.
Yeah. She goes over this kind of stuff on a regular basis, like
Right.
reads out stories from Reddit, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was listening to one this morning about a woman who had spina bifida, went to a grocery store with her walker. She had braces on her legs, but they were covered by whatever she was wearing, and had problems walking and wanted to use the scooter. But I guess the woman who was already there wanted to use it or something like that, and berated this poor woman with the spina bifida while she was trying to get the cart, while she was using the cart, and followed her was in the bathroom and refused to come out of the handicap stall and was berating her again. This poor woman decided to just drop her drawers in the bathroom to show the woman the braces and whatnot going on.
Yeah, like you need
to
evidence.
show her that she was actually disabled.
Yeah. Crazy.
You know, and the aggression that this woman had towards this poor lady with the spina bifida, it's a false sense of superiority. It's a false sense of power. Like this, why did this woman think she had the power to dictate who gets to use the scooter?
Yeah,
Right.
or like a false sense of justice. Like, I'm seeing an injustice. This woman doesn't have a right to. Just assuming that she's not actually disabled.
Right.
That whole idea of I have to correct the world. Wow, it's like, who do you think you are?
The audacity of these people.
The audacity.
Right. And I think that this comes from a victim mentality, because this woman felt like a victim of the woman with spina bifida because she wanted to use the scooter.
Right.
So she was being victimized by what she perceived as someone who was faking it. Right.
Right.
It's all kind of twisted up. Like this whole entitlement thing is like this weird twisted up sense of reality that has nothing to do with reality.
Right.
And it all has everything to do with someone's perception of reality.
There's perception again. They have this twisted lens where they're the perpetual victim. Everybody else is doing them wrong. They need to have certain rights and privileges because they are who they are.
Right. Well, I wanted to talk real quick about when is someone actually a victim? Like, because it feels like the definition of what a victim is has been kind of expanded to the point where no one's a victim anymore.
Yeah.
So when is someone actually a victim?
The woman in the story who actually has spina bifida would be the victim because she was being subjected to this other woman's ideology about who was entitled to whatever, and she just assumed the other woman who was actually disabled was faking it because she wanted the scooter.
Yeah, so that like a bullying situation where so it's kind of like the opposite. The person who's entitled feels like they're the victim. But what they're doing is trying to force their way on other people.
Right.
And the people on the receiving end then become the victims of this entitled behavior.
Right. So she's creating a false and unjust hierarchy based on lies.
Just because I'm me.
Just because I'm me.
Just a quick little anecdote. My ex-husband used to say that all the time when I'd ask him why he thought he deserved something. He would literally say, in a joking way, but he still said, because I am me. That was his explanation, as if that was supposed to be enough.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, because anybody can say that. So I'm me. So why shouldn't I be, entitled to X, Y, and Z then?
I think somebody told me once a while back that nobody owes me. The world doesn't owe me anything. No one owes me anything.
Right.
And I think a lot of people feel like they're owed something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By virtue of existing.
Well, I think some of that can come from being a victim early on. Like, for example, there are certain things that a parent owes their children, and as the caretaker, they owe them a safe place. They owe them love. They owe them balanced and healthy discipline, enough food, affection, all of the things that really are owed, right? And the child doesn't receive, say, a number of those. And what can start off as, I really was owed X, Y, and Z, can become, they didn't give that to me. And then that can expand into this, I'm a victim.
I think conversely, that also, if you're treated in a spoiled way as a child, that will create this sense of superiority and entitlement.
Yes.
Yeah. Makes me think of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory with, I want it now. That
the girl who ate the
salt. Yeah.
The salt with the blueberry gum.
Yeah. And just, she was the bad egg. But anyway, they were both brats, but they were all brats.
All the kids but Charlie were entitled.
Yeah. So if you want a pretty quick primer on what entitlement looks like in children, watch the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah. We'd like to thank you guys for joining us today. We just want to remind you that we are on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We'd like you to share this podcast with other people if you find value in what we're saying and the topics that we choose to talk about. Why not share it with someone else? We do have a Patreon page. We also have, if you go to our website at kintsugi.com, that's KINTSUGI company.com, there's a way for you to donate to us. It is not tax deductible, but you can support what we're doing by giving us a few bucks. Like, think of it as buying us a cup of coffee or whatever. We also have videos that we're putting out on Facebook, Twitter, or X, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. They're little shorts that we're creating that are generally related to the upcoming episode, talking about like the little microscopic podcast episodes, I guess you could say, that we're talking about, things that are on our mind that we basically want to help people think differently and to maybe have a better life because they're making better choices. And so now back to the episode. All right. We have defined entitlement as inherently deserving of privileges or special treatment. The toxic side being just because you exist or exist as a certain thing or whatever.
Yeah.
We defined why it's a problem. So there's all sorts of things that happen when people have entitlement as part of their way of thinking, their perspective. So let's talk about how entitlement plays out in relationships and society, which Rochelle and I have stories.
Yes, lots of stories.
I've got some too. I'll bet you've got some stories.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody's experienced this. So I'm going to talk about the first part of our experience together. And then if you want to talk about what happened later with the same person. Yeah. Okay, so Rochelle and I go shopping every other week together, and we often pick somewhere to go for breakfast as part of our sister date. Mm-hmm. And we went to a specific place here in our town, and we were just sitting there waiting for our food, drinking coffee, whatever. And there's this woman that was sitting over by the window, looking out the window. She was very calm. Nothing seemed to be going on. Although she looked kind of bedraggled, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. But, it's early in the morning. It's not unusual to see bedraggled people that early, especially if they haven't had coffee.
Right.
True. So true.
At any rate, so after about 5-10 minutes, her phone rang, and she immediately launched into berating, I'm assuming was her mother, on the other end of the phone. And she kept repeating herself, "I'm not walking half a mile to get my car." Because apparently from the conversation, her car was in impound. She didn't explain why, obviously, but she screamed obscenities at her mother.
Wow. She
aggressively repeated the same phrases over and over again. "Will you please get my car? Will you please?" Like a 2-year-old.
Pretty much.
It was like listening to an adult toddler trying to get their way by screaming, berating, being aggressive, being there's a word I want. Aggressive. I don't know. Clearly, this woman felt entitled to her mother's help.
Right. Jeez.
To get her car from wherever it was, and to get a ride to get her car, and for her mother to pay for her car being an impound. She went over a whole list of things she expected her mother to do. And I would guess that her mother, because it sounded like she was living with her mother, is enabling this person.
Yeah.
To behave this way by giving in to their every demand because they don't want to deal with the barrage of, being screamed at, being called names. I mean, she was using all kinds of words that I can't say on this to manipulate.
Wow.
She was trying to manipulate her mother. And thankfully, one of the workers at the place we were at finally spoke up after about five or so minutes of this and told her to quiet down because she was getting louder and louder as she went on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once the worker spoke up, everybody else was kind of looking at each other like, wow.
Like, can you believe this? Right?
Can you believe that? I had wanted to say something, but Rochelle's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't.
Yeah. I don't want that on
what
you.
else happened with this person, Rochelle?
So the following Tuesday, I was working, and we have drinks that we make at my job, and it was lunchtime, which is our busiest time of day. Mm-hmm. And I was barely keeping up. Somebody was helping me catch up, and she had ordered a drink. I didn't recognize her at first that day.
Same woman.
Yeah, she ordered a drink and was staying there waiting. Everybody else was waiting as well. And 99% of people understand how busy we are. They don't get upset if they have to wait for the drink because they know it's lunchtime and they know we're busy. So no one's like demanding us make their drink faster or whatever. But she kept coming over and asking me, "Is my drink ready yet? Is my drink ready yet?" And she was getting more agitated. And I'm like, "I'm sorry, I have like 3 drinks ahead of yours right now, but as soon as I get to it, I will." And the other lady who was helping me was we have one side is regular drinks, the other side is milkshakes and ice cream parfaits. So 2 screens going. She's got like 3 milkshakes and I've got like 4 drinks on the board. So she can't really come over and help me do what I'm doing. Right. So I had 3 drinks ahead of this lady's, and I'm like, she kept coming over and asking me that, and then I finally got to her drink and she walked away. And I thought she was going to leave the store, but she actually had to come back. But she came back, she said, "Well, it's about time." And then walked away. And I had to make sure she paid for it because I thought she might steal it. I don't know. The second time was on Thursday. I was standing over by, you walk in our store from the back door to your immediate left. There's a soda machine and a hot dog warmer, and the whole soda area is right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was standing by the hot dog warmer trying to plug in a vacuum or unplug a vacuum. And she pushed past me and pushed me forward over the counter. Now, she did say she was sorry, but she just kept going. She didn't even stop. She didn't stop to like look at me or anything. She just kept walking. And that was when I recognized her. I'm like, oh my gosh, the same lady from Friday. Just acting entitled again. Like she doesn't care who she knocks over or what she does. She just wants what she wants.
Yeah. Wow. And I was just thinking, continued to repeated behavior, right? I mean, anybody can be a jerk. Anybody can act entitled.
Or have an off day.
But when you see a pattern, that's when I think we can go into, that sounds like entitlement, not just one-off.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Evelyn, do you have any, thoughts on your experiences?
Oh, I got lots.
Well, we don't have all day.
Okay, fine. So I think a big one for me. So I was in an intimate relationship with someone for years, and when we were first dating, he had said that he wanted to be partners. He wanted to be equal, right? And I love that idea. Yes, I could picture us going into life, arm in arm, we're together. But as the years went on, it became more and more obvious that there was a power imbalance there. And when I started to protest, like, hey, we're supposed to be partners, he became irate. And he asked me, do you think you're entitled to, in this case, seeing all of our bank accounts, all of our shared bank accounts? As though I'm being unreasonable. And I'm like, well, yeah, So that's just one instance of what really had become a very toxic pattern over the years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough because, unless you've agreed ahead of time to that kind of power dynamic in a marriage, unless you're like allowing it because you believe in it, you're not, both parties are not necessarily entitled to dominate the other person.
Right.
In the marriage. That has to be agreed on. Otherwise, it's just, an authoritative or authoritarian versus subject. The man makes all the decisions and the woman, or vice versa.
Yeah.
It could be a woman doing that to a man.
Right.
It's not just men doing it. Women also behave domineering and aggressively in relationships. So, but the point is that, they said one thing, but did something different.
Right.
Yeah. And it's especially insidious if then they double down by basically justifying this is the way it should be. This is what healthy looks like. That whole idea of, as we were talking about before, about that twisted mindset. Mm-hmm. When that spouse or, intimate partner just insists on perpetuating their twisted narrative and expect you to go along.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, no, we're supposed to be equal.
Right. Yeah, because the expectation was set that you would be equal, but then the reality was you weren't.
Right.
And that would put you in the role of actually being a victim to someone else's domineering behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was really hard to confront, because there again, I was not, we actually have a couple of podcasts you guys want to listen to about confrontation, stuff I wish I had known years ago. Oh my gosh. But I didn't know how to confront in a healthy way, and I was just afraid of what might happen. Mm-hmm. So, there again.
They kind of create a dynamic where if you did say anything, it became threatening and scary.
Yeah. It actually, once I started to, I was taking a stab at it, just trying to, basically advocate for myself and for what he had said we would have. And he just out of the blue became irate and loud and scary.
Yeah, loud and scary.
And he's bigger than me. So
Yeah, that's the other problem with this sort of thing. Which is why a lot of people don't bother dealing with people who are behaving entitled in public.
Right.
Because they're, afraid of getting hurt.
Yeah.
So another thing that's been going on, this seems like the last couple of years, especially since COVID, that's kind of gotten out of hand, at least here in my state, is dangerous drivers who seem to feel entitled to break the law in a variety of ways that are creating dangerous situations for the rest of us who are trying to obey the law.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For example, tailgating, aggressively tailgating.
Mm-hmm.
When you're on, let's say, Route 95 going north, you're doing 65, you're all the way in the right-hand lane, doing the speed limit, staying out of the way of the people who want to do 85 in the left lane. But there's some person in your lane wanting you to go 85, right? And they get really close to you on your bumper and hang out there for a very long time, or at least what feels like a long time. If it's any more than 10 seconds, it feels long to me.
It's like, what are you doing?
And then eventually deciding to pass you.
Right.
Like, if you want to drive that fast, first of all, get over there.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what the lane's for.
Second of all, pass me at a respectful distance.
Right.
Why do you feel entitled to go that fast in any lane you want to go fast in?
Yeah, like that whole idea of being threatening. Like, you should do what I want you to do, so I'm getting up on your bumper.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I want to drive fast, let me go into the other lanes.
Right. I had a situation on a sort of a secondary road. It was dark. There was a lot of cars. The speed limit was only 50.
Mm-hmm.
But it seemed like everybody was going like 55 or 60.
Yeah.
And I was in the right-hand lane, but this big box truck got behind me and got super close to my back end.
Oof.
I actually had a panic attack, and I managed to get over out of the way, and I pulled into a turn lane just to get away from this truck driver because they scared me so bad. My anxiety in that situation was created by that, but also makes it harder for me to drive safely.
Yeah.
Because, the adrenaline surging through my body, I can't keep track of what's going on. I'm obeying the law.
Right.
I'm doing the right thing. They're not, and they're acting like I'm the problem.
Right. So that victim mentality then victimized you.
Right. The victim of, well, I'm in a hurry.
Yeah, you should go as fast as I want to go. And now I'm punishing you.
Right. Get out of my way. You're in my way.
Or go faster. Come on, go faster. It's like, seriously?
I really don't understand. It seems to be a lot of younger people. A lot of times people who pass me are much younger when they're doing that aggressive behavior. Like, who taught them to drive?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, what's inside of you that gives you that, kind of aggression?
Yeah. And I see this a lot on high-speed roads, especially.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, in my 20s, I used to drive down to Northern Virginia every other weekend to visit some friends. And I'd have to go on 95, 695, and then whatever the beltway is around Washington, D.C. So a lot of interstates. And I saw this behavior there way back then. Mm-hmm. But it was normal because it's a more populated area, especially on a Friday. I was usually going down just before or right at rush hour. Mm-hmm. So I expected that to happen.
Yeah.
But now, fast forwarding 30 years later, and we're not in a very hugely populated area,
No.
and it's happening every time I go out now.
Yeah.
Like on Thursday night, I'm driving and there's a red light. The light's yellow. It's turning red. The car behind me, I knew they were going to do it. I could feel them trying to get over this way and over this way. And as soon as we stopped, they just kept going and went right through the red light.
So they went right around you.
Yeah.
They were behind you.
Literally
He
went like that.
You. That's
and
crazy.
Could the audience see your hand do that?
Go like that. So she did this like fast to the right and then zooming ahead.
Zooming ahead. Yeah, that's no one can see
you
my
guys
hand.
Totally saw that.
But the entitlement in that sense is extremely dangerous because the average person, the most dangerous thing they will ever do is drive a car. That was drilled into me when I was younger and I was in EMT. And I'll never forget it because I've seen too many people get hurt or kill somebody because they did not pay attention or they were being entitled.
Yeah.
And driving dangerously.
So the last thing we have on our list of how entitlement plays out in relationships and society is the quote Karen phenomenon.
With our apologies to everyone who's named Karen.
Yeah.
I've actually only known kind and pleasant Karens. So
True.
my apology that your name got dragged through like this. But
yeah, it could be the Stephanie phenomenon. It could be the Deb phenomenon. I mean, it could be anybody.
Evelyn phenomenon.
But unfortunately, Karen seems to be a popular name with a certain generation of women who act entitled.
Apparently so.
I guess.
So we're putting Karen in quotes.
Yeah. So what is this phenomenon?
Basically, women and sometimes men acting entitled seemingly out of nowhere, usually with strangers, and are creating chaotic and potentially scary situations and victimizing people who aren't really doing anything wrong, but in their mind, in the Karen's mind, quote unquote, they're doing something wrong, and they take it upon themselves to correct the other person.
Yes, that whole thing, like, I need to correct this wrong, but it's not appropriate.
Right.
Yeah, I think one of the classic moves in that way is that you hear a lot is, let me talk to your manager. So the person is a customer in some way in some business and feels entitled to something from that business that wouldn't necessarily be their privilege.
Right.
But they still feel entitled to it. So now they want to talk to the manager because the underlings, the actual employees, don't have the power to give this person what they want.
Right.
So they ask for the manager or the supervisor. You know, I've had to ask for managers and supervisors when I was being stonewalled by lower level reps. But that was when I was sure that there was something that I needed that they couldn't do.
Right. That's legit. I mean, there is a place for that for sure.
Right. But when it's, you know, something that isn't normally given out to people as customers, then, you know, some woman or man coming along saying, well, you owe me this. You know, and then the underlings or the employees not being able to do anything about it and then asking for the manager is a classic move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the whole idea of the customer is always right, unless they're wrong. I mean, come on now.
Right. I've had situations with the local Chipotles where I ordered a specific burrito and I got someone else's order, and I've had to call and ask for the manager because this is like the second time that, you know, what is happening?
Yeah.
Why are you making my burrito wrong?
You got to break down in the system somewhere.
Right. If they got it wrong the first time, maybe I wouldn't necessarily talk to the manager about that. But if it's been 2 or 3 times, there's a pattern.
Right.
Now I need to speak up.
Right. But that's legit. You know, that's asking someone to be professional, to be treated right as a customer.
Right. Because literally what you're selling me is a burrito.
So you're legitimately entitled to that.
I'm entitled to what I paid for.
Yeah.
And if I paid for a specific kind of burrito, like I'm allergic to corn, for example, and there was corn in my burrito,
yeah,
that's a problem.
And what if you had just bitten into it, you know?
Right.
But so how would a Karen, my apologies to the Karens, how would they handle that sort of situation?
Well, it would seem to me that they're looking for something beyond what they paid for. You know, so if you go to Chipotle's to get a burrito and you think that you're entitled to extra things that you didn't pay for, and you start berating the cashier about it, and then you ask for the manager because the cashier has no power to give you what you're asking for.
Right.
That would be the difference between, this is the 3rd time they've gotten my burrito order wrong.
Right.
And I'm owed this thing.
Yeah, like I'm owed more meat than anyone else who orders the same burrito. You didn't give me enough meat, just for example. So
So I think we're going to end it here for now.
Oh, we just got started.
Yeah, I know. It feels like these half hours always go so fast. Although this one's been longer than half an hour.
There's so much to talk about in this subject. It's a good one.
So we're going to end this part of the episode here. And we'd like to thank you for joining us today. Look for part 2. which is going to be all about the kryptonite to entitled behavior. Like, what's the antidote to it? Mm-hmm. I guess antidote would be a better term than kryptonite.
Well, kryptonite sounds cool.
Yeah.
Sounds cool. But kryptonite was used against the good guys, so maybe that's not such a...
True.
Bad guy kryptonite.
I don't know.
Anyway, you'll want to tune in because it's going to be a good one.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll talk to you next time. Okay.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks so much for joining us as we discussed such an important topic. We hope you got some food for thought and encouragement to keep going and keep growing. See you later, Bear Club.
Remember to join the Bear Club on our Patreon page for exclusive content. The link is in the description. You can find our podcast on Google, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.